Yeah, sure. I mean, Mark came up initially with the idea for doing a series where the bad guy had won, and originally we began to create the series for a company called Guerrilla, which was a new company, along with George Perez, Stuart Immonen, Joe Perry, Pasquale Ferry, Tom Grummett, a whole bunch of guys, Mike Ringo and Todd DeZago. But the idea was it would be a comic company run by the creators, for the creators. Unfortunately, the financiers of the company didn't really come through as we'd been led to expect. So we'd already produced the first 2 issues of Empire, and basically Mark paid for the production himself. And so at that point I said, well, we can't really afford to keep doing this, because obviously you have to produce the books before you get any money back, and contrary to rumours, most comic creators, and us in particular, weren't independently wealthy at the time. So I went to DC and said, look, we've got what we think is a good book, would you be interested in publishing it? And they were, and so we published Empire with DC Comics in the States. They reprinted the original Guerrilla issues and then 6 further issues. And then it kind of got put on hold because Mark and I went on to do, I think the next project we did was the Legion of Superheroes with DC, or JLA Year 1, I can't remember which now, but anyway. And time passed, and then Mark moved away from DC, as indeed did I, but unfortunately DC still retained the rights to Empire, so we couldn't do it again until the rights returned to us. And last year, or the year before, DC returned the rights to us, which meant we could start publishing it again. So we decided to have it published by IDW in America and with Delcourt in France, and that brings us to where we are today. Well, we've been asking for them back for a considerable amount of time, but as with all these things, unfortunately, the original contract that was drawn up before digital comics existed, and then as time passed, you get questions like, well, if a comic is available digitally, does that still mean it's in print, or does it not mean it's in print? And it becomes a bit of a grey area. And also DC, in the original contract, also had retained the rights that if we wanted to do any more, we would do it with them first. They had to have first refusal, but because of our contractual situation elsewhere, that couldn't happen. So it was basically it was a goodwill gesture on their part to return the rights to us. I think one of the things which makes it distinct, apart from the fact, there's a few things. One thing is there is no real hero. Even when you think you like a character, you find that there are things about them which really you can't like. And and inversely, I guess, even in the most evil characters, Mark can usually dialogue them sympathetically so that you at least feel something for them. The other big difference is because we own them, and because we're not part of a greater continuity, anything that happens in Empire is a permanent thing. So if someone dies in Empire, they're dead. They're not going to come back from the dead. They're not going to be rebooted. They're not going to be cloned. Well, they may be cloned. Who knows? But basically, yeah, everything has consequences, and the world moves on. It's not going to be a case where after 10 issues or whatever we think, oh, we'd like to get back to where we were on issue 1, really, let's reboot it. Well, that's not going to happen. I was actually talking about this with the editor at Delcourt today, is that we're actually freer to do more because we can end the series whenever we feel. I mean, at the moment it's an ongoing thing, but if ever we reach a point where we feel this has to end, then because we own it, we can end it, which is a nice freedom to have. Well, one of the thoughts behind it was we wanted to break a lot of the kind of cliches in the design. So I mean, you know, everybody had become used to Doctor Doom and Darth Vader, and you know, all the bad guys always wear black, and they always look sinister. The thing with Golgoth was I wanted him to still be imposing and still sinister, but the truth is with most bad guys, as Mark often says, the bad guys always think they're the hero. So you know, they don't necessarily dress like a villain because they actually think they're a hero. And Golgoth actually thinks he's creating a better world. He thinks he's saving the world by ruling it. So that was where the bright colours and things came in. But also, hopefully, the design also, it's still scary, kind of unintentionally, and still imposing. No, I don't think that was ever intentional, but I can see where you're coming from. I think we're kind of walking the line between the very American thing where the good guys must always win, and you know, justice must always triumph, and the equally now in fashionable thing of everything's dark and grim, and we're kind of, I mean, although many things are horribly frightening and scary about the world of Empire, there is still some positive aspects for a lot of people. You know, the world does run properly. There are no wars going on. People still do have aspirations and hopes and beliefs. But it is kind of pointing out that sometimes there's a nasty twist to everything, which is kind of, I guess, what you're seeing from the 2000 AD kind of thing. It's a digital format with Thrillben, and it's published in print by IDW. The first trade paperback of the second volumes is out round about now, I think.
Is there a difference between the print version and the digital? Because I read the digital version and I thought there were a lot of text, like traveling or moving the dialogues. So I don't know how that.
Yeah, there are differences. There are differences. Yeah, and the story isn't exactly the same in both editions.
There's this circular shot. There's a circular shot.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can't see that going.
No, I had to redraw that. I redrew that piece completely as a double-page spread, but yeah, I tried the best I could to try and recreate it, but there was just no way it was going to work, so I had to completely redo that. And there was another one where you descended vertically into a nightmare, which obviously you can't do. And there are slight differences in the stories as well, but they both stand alone and they both complement each other. So if you read it online or in print, you'll get a complete story, but you may learn slightly different things in one than you do in the other. But the plan is neither should detract from the other, but if you do decide you want to see both, you might find something extra in either as well. So you're not just duplicating your money for your dollar. We basically plot it as we go along. So often we don't know exactly what is going to happen next. When Mark and I work together, we normally we have at the moment a very vague outline for about 12 issues ahead, but literally that can change in one conversation, because we let the story kind of tell itself. And so sometimes the story, we'll say oh, that character's going to be a hero, but we'll get to a point in the story where we'll say, oh, they have to die at this point. And so that completely ruins where we thought we were going with that character. But if them dying makes sense and makes it a better story, then we always go that way and kill them. And I mean, that happened with Dream Girl in Legion of Superheroes. We had no intention originally of killing her, but you know, we were talking one day and Mark said, you know what, she has to die in this issue. And we, initially, you kind of recoil against it. No, I like that character. Then you realise, yeah, it makes a good story. That makes the story. And so, yeah, for him, not a great deal actually. Most people seem to have read both and enjoyed both for different reasons. I think sometimes the thing you can do with the digital format that you can't do with the print one is that you can surprise people, because you can conceal something until the last minute, whereas on a comics page, as soon as they see the page, they can see the last panel. So sometimes digitally, we've discovered we can surprise people more that way than any other way. That's really difficult to say. I mean, Mark was recently voted Best Writer at the Harvey Awards, and we had a panel celebrating his career in comics. And on the panel, Mark said that probably he and I have had a longer relationship than anyone else, in each other's lives. So we've worked together for like over 25 years now, and even when we weren't working Empire, we were still talking to each other all the time and still working intermittently on different projects. So it's really difficult to say how much has changed, because we've changed together. I mean, we still work in very much the same way. It's still very much a back and forth where we both do the plot together, and then often once we've worked the plot out, I'll draw the whole issue before Mark does any dialogue. So often when I see the dialogue, I'm actually surprised by what the characters are saying, even though I drew it and I've put notes on it saying what I think they're saying. Mark will obviously often find some way of saying something which is surprising and gives you another insight. And often it might even be the opposite to what I thought they were saying, but it just works and it tells the same story. And I think conversely he'll say that he's thought, oh, I'm going to do this really big dialogue scene, and then he'll see the pictures and say, they don't actually need to be saying anything. That tells the story without me doing anything. And that's the way we've always worked, and that's why I think we always work together, because it is kind of a special thing that I'm very grateful he likes working with me that way, and I hope it's reciprocal. But it's a special thing, and it's slightly unique, in the 30 years I've been working in comics, to work the way we do.
It's like a two-headed writer and artist.
Yeah. Although we are apart from comics and working together, we're probably as different as two people can get. I mean, we have completely the opposite taste in music, books, literature. We're sort of chalk and cheese completely, but the one thing we do agree on is comics, what makes a good comic, and working together just works. And living together would be a complete disaster. One of us would have killed the other by the end of the first week, but working together we're fine. You're talking within the comic world. Because I was going to say Frank Zappa, just because I think he's a genius.
That was a good choice. That's a new one. Hey.
Why him?
Musically, I just think he's a genius. I love his guitar playing, I love his composition, his wit, his intelligence. So he would be who I'd choose. I mean, I could choose hundreds of other people, but I think, off the top of my head, Frank was the first person that...
That's okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.